Here, is it cool if I like go through? Like when you're taping, just push me through.
Okay, guys, check this out. I got Joel with me. We're going to do a whole crap load of training. That's funny. John is the guy that's paying us. Correct. So you are going to learn, it's going to be a long-ass video. If you want to endure, there's a lot to learn. I'm not going to tell you where all the little nuggets are. You're going to have to figure that out yourself. We're going to be talking about a whole lot of stuff. We're actually shooting this at the end of it. So we'll take a quick look because this is our arsenal of stuff. A rotary, all different. We got 2 different DA, actually 3. This is for my wet sanding. This is the new Boss. This is the Rupes. We've got my whole tool chest of polishes, compounds, buffer pads, sanding discs, tape. Go down the list. This is actually the finished product, which this is part of the world of editing. In case you're naive and don't understand how it works, that you don't necessarily tape in the natural sequence. So Joel, and because there's going to be a lot of info in this video, you tested both the griots and the rupes, and you ended up choosing which one? You don't even know. The orange red one? Yes, that's the Griots Boss 21. So they're both quality machines, but as a beginner, you liked that one because, what were you saying? It's a little bit heavier, but it has a better grip, so more ergonomically friendlier to your oversized hands, your ape hanger hands that probably knuckle draggers. Do you have calluses on your knuckles from dragging along the ground?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, give it some time. But it was a little bit heavier.
Yep.
But you thought the power was better, right?
And I had a quicker.
Oh yes, there's no delay
on
the trigger. Yeah, that's my pet peeve with the Rupes. There's a little delay. Okay, cool. So tell all the chicks about this video, and you'll be a rock star. Okay, so according to my phone, we are on camera. Hey guys, I'm here with Joel. Joel is my student. How old are you, Joel?
17.
17? You're that young? Wow. All right. So Joel's 17. He works for
Exclusive Motors.
Exclusive Motors. Exclusive Motors is one of the very few dealerships that I actually do work for. And they have hired me to train Joel here in the art of buffer use, paint correction, call it whatever you want. Joel's responsibility is to try to get the cars that they buy at wholesale so that you can then refurbish them, restore them, bring them up to a higher level so that they can be sold at a retail level, correct?
Correct.
Part of that is the process of fixing paint, making it look better so it can be sold. So, in talking to your boss, that's my boss right now, which is John. Hey John. He wanted me to train you, and he says, hey, do you think Joel should take some notes down because they've got you kind of bouncing around, doing lots of different jobs. You're kind of the gopher. Go for this, go for that, do this, do that. So there could be days, weeks in between times that you're doing other stuff versus being behind a buffer, let's say. So his fear was that you would forget. And I said, well, he could take notes down, or check this out, try this on. We could video it. It could be on my YouTube channel. So if you ever got into a pinch, you could just sit and watch and fast forward it and say like, okay, what did Darren have me do first? What did Darren say about this pad? I don't remember exactly what he said about this pad. What was the speed setting? So all those things could be right there for you. And I thought, well shoot, if you want to know, I know they want to know. Because I have very few videos that do talk about paint correction. And when it comes to detailing, that's what everyone wants to know. Because it's oh so glamorous. So, let's discuss buffers first. Or not. So here we have what is called a rotary high-speed. Just know that buffers, wow, the noise is horrendous. We are at a shop. They actually work on cars here. So buffer and polisher, you know the difference? There really isn't one. It's just a different label. So people assign different labels based on whatever they are used to. I don't think there's any really official difference. Typically though, with that said, is they will tend to label a polisher like this, that's a rotary polisher, as a polisher rather than a buffer. But it's literally, it doesn't matter. What does matter is how this is designed, which is it spins on a single axis point. So I'm going to take this pad off. So right there is a single axis point. That's all it does. It's a spin. And there's a speed control dial here for you folks, and this is the DeWalt, which is the workhorse of the industry. In my opinion, it's kind of like where you get the most bang for your buck. It's not overpriced for some of the name brand like Flex. Well, Flex is about the only one I can think of. Anyhow, so DeWalt, it's a good bang for your buck. It's got a speed control dial here. And the newer ones will dial down to a 600 RPM. Now that doesn't mean much to you because you don't know, but that's very slow. Incredibly slow. Back in the day, these buffers, I think, used to start at 1200 RPMs at the slow speed, and then they went down to 1000 RPMs, and now they can start at 600 RPMs, which is very slow and very safe. So I could put this in your hands, set it for 600 RPMs, put any kind of pad to it, and you could be relatively safe without burning edges. Do you know what that term means? Okay, see, this is why this is good. I've been in the industry so long that all this terminology is just normal for me. But for Joel here, he doesn't know what burning an edge is. You probably don't know what holograms are, or swirl marks, or buffer trails, or spider webbing, or all that is, correct?
Yes.
You might be able to connect dots and like spider webbing. I think I might know what he means by that. So burning an edge, that's why this is considered the red-headed stepchild. Do you know what I mean when I say that? That's a derogatory term. Sorry if any of you are red-headed stepchildren out there. So what happens is, because this has so much bad press on it, and it's kind of like guns. What kills people? Is it the gun or the person behind the gun? The endless debate. So let's not hate the polisher. Let's not hate the gun. Let's hate the moron behind the polisher or the gun, okay? We'll keep it at that. So the point is I could, if I wanted to, do a lot of damage to this paint in various ways with a high-speed buffer. Now it will tool up to, this one in particular, 3,500 RPMs, which means it will spin 3,500 times within a minute. RPMs. Do you know what that, are you familiar with that acronym? Revolutions per minute. So 3,500 RPMs is pretty fast. And just to apply some context, I never use this buffer anywhere near that. When I'm working on paint, it's going to be anywhere from 600 with this buffer or this polisher, anywhere from 600 RPMs up to 1,800 RPMs on cars. Boats, I might go up a little higher in RPMs, maybe 2,000 tops, but really between the pad choice and the pressure and the compound or the polish that I'm using, that's where I'm going to control elements between those RPM speeds. So burning an edge is one of the big fears, or putting in what's called holograms, or I grew up in the industry and we call them swirl marks, which is this kind of pattern. And this car has them. If this was in the sun, we're actually working on a Mercedes S550. I think this car brand new is probably a $100,000 car. When it was brand new. Right now it has 19,000 miles on it, and the paint looks like they've been washing it with gravel for the past 2 years. It's just horrid. And now I can't remember where I was going with that. So there was somewhere I was going with that, and now I don't remember where it was. So, yes, thank you, swirl marks. So if we were to have this in the sun, swirl marks, and because swirl marks was not good enough for the industry, we had to come up with we had to fabricate something more glamorous, more esoteric. And thence we have holograms. You know what a hologram is? Like, never mind the car world, do you even know what a hologram is? Yeah, me too. I kind of know, but I kind of don't. I would have to look it up. But we have decided to adopt it as far as the industry and call it hologramming. So what, I don't know, did you look at this in the sun when you first got it? Okay, you've probably seen these patterns where it's almost like these light patterns, like a light is creating a pattern on the car, and when you shift directions, it's like they're floating on the paint, and they change. It's almost like these marks, holograms, are lifted up off the paint, and you think, for example, if there's a spot on the paint, every direction I look at, that spot stays exactly where it is. But holograms, as you move, it's almost like they float and they change, and that's why I think they call them holograms. But I grew up and we just called those buffer tracks, buffer trails, swirl marks. The point is it's just improper use. Let me correct that. It's not that it's necessarily improper use of this wool pad. It's just that this wool pad combined with this buffer, because it only spins on a single axis point. That's all it does. Single axis point right there. It's a natural byproduct of using these on paint. It will create buffer trails. So people will say, oh, that's improper use, or that's someone didn't know what they were doing. It's like, well, that's not necessarily true. What they didn't do is they didn't remove them. So if I have to do enough paint correcting, it's a requirement to use certain tools. But because there's so many choices now, it's kind of like you saying you want to go somewhere. Well, you could probably find 50 different routes to get to the same destination. It's just a matter of your skill set, all the variables, how quickly you want to get there. You know, do you want a scenic route, or you just want to cut to the chase? So the same rules kind of apply with polishing, because a lot of guys do not know how to use a rotary because they're becoming obsolete because of the new latest and greatest in DA polishers, which we'll show you. But this is a workhorse. I can cut to the chase quicker with this and do a lot of damage in a good way that I cannot do with a DA polisher, which I'll talk about in a moment. So this is where skill set comes in. So swirl marks, that's one of the main why this machine is stigmatized, why it has a bad rap, because of swirl marks typically, and then burning edges. Because this is spinning on a single axis, the friction that it develops on certain points is very significant. Okay, so here we have the black Mercedes, and one of the reasons this machine is stigmatized, and because it can produce a lot of friction. But if you know how to manage that friction and control it, and you understand it, you can use it to your advantage. If you don't understand it, it can get away from you and cause damage. So burning an edge is literally that, where the edge or the seams of panels, or what's called character lines, that's what I call them. It's like the topography. You know what topography means? Okay, it's literally like the landscape as far as the heights, the valleys. So the topography of this car hood, it's not perfectly flat, correct? Never mind that it has some embellishments, which are these front grills. intakes. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. So the topography of this hood means that you have to apply certain pressure. It's all about awareness. So if there's an edge, if I have this polisher spinning at a high rate or whatever rate, it's going to, instead of dissipating, how do I explain this? So for example, this pad is completely on the hood, and therefore all the friction is dissipated on the entire surface of this pad, correct? But let's say I take that edge, and now the edge, or the buffer, is only on that edge. All that friction is now concentrated right on that edge, correct? So therefore, it's a danger area, because now I'm just taking this much friction, or this much surface area, and I've reduced it, and now I'm putting it on a single edge. So that is what happens is, if I hold this there long enough, the friction will develop quicker and more significant on the edge, and therefore will burn it. And when I say burn it, I mean it will take the paint off of that edge. So that's what burning an edge is. So all these seams, all these areas are all problem areas as far as using this buffer, or any buffer. They're just more of a problem with the high speed because it can get away from you quicker. But trust me, there's other trade-offs with a DA that are more dangerous, for lack of a better description, than this buffer. So for example, in this moment, I can sit here and dial this down. I can sit here and hold my hand against it. Put your hand against it. Now you control how hard you push it, and you can feel it heating up, right? So that's friction. So I'll show you on this DA with these foam pads that the friction is can actually be different and more significant in a worse way than this. So I could literally take this edge like this, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. But with certain trim on a car, this polish, or this pad specifically, and the fact that it's spinning on a single axis, would actually make it safer than that polisher, which is kind of ironic for many people. They think, oh, the DA is the safest. It's like foolproof. Never mind, you have these emblems that you have to worry about. So if you're polishing on this and you're so focused on the surface, and that's a problem, is you become what's called hyperfocus, which means it's like tunnel vision. Instead of having all this peripheral vision, you now get so narrow-minded because you're so fixated and hyper-focused on a very specific spot that as you're working, you forget about what's going on around here. So you may have a cord that's hanging in the wrong spot, and suddenly you're working, and then the cord whips around and it gets watered up in this. Or you're working and you don't realize, because you're looking over here, you're doing this, and next thing you know, you run into that and you rip it right off the car. So it is really about awareness. Okay, so I'm not going to teach you that. With all that said, we're not starting here. We are starting with one of these. You hold this one, okay? Just so you know, this is the Rupe's 21, I think it's millimeter Bigfoot. So what this means is 21 millimeters. I think that's approximate. And what that has to do is how big, or this is what's called a throw. And here is in the difference. Here, you hold that one. I also have my new Griot's Garage, and this is I believe a Boss G21 which means it has a 21 millimeter throw also. So hold that. Plug one of these in. Yep, there we go. Okay, so here are a couple of the big names in DA polishers. So DA, I'm certain you don't know what that stands for. It stands for dual action. You know why it says dual action? Dual as in two. So what this does is it spins on an axis, plus it oscillates like this. So think of it this way. You have the Earth, and it spins, and that's what gives us the 24-hour days, right? Now tell me if this is not the perfect metaphor, okay? So we have the Earth and the Sun. So we have the Earth here, and it spins on an axis, right? And that's what gives us its 24-hour days. So we have the Sun that generates all the light and heat and UV, and then it goes around the moon or the sun, right? And that's what gives us the year. Okay, the axis tilt is what is the seasonal changes, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here. This is going in the Wayback Machine. The point is a DA, it spins and it oscillates. So think of this as the spinning of the Earth, and then it oscillates and goes around the sun. So it's really kind of meant to duplicate what people would call the natural way that you would wax a car. And the reason they developed these is to reduce or eliminate completely swirl marks or holograms. Because now that friction it's spinning, but it's also oscillating around. So if you see these little marks, like you have a hole here and then these different holes. This plate doesn't have it. Anyhow, now I'm going to make things even more confusing. This is what's called a non-forced rotation or a non-direct drive. And what that means is that I'm going to dial this down to level 1. I cannot stop this from oscillating, but I can stop it from spinning. So that means if I put enough pressure on this, can you see these little marks? Like for example, right now, you see how the pad is doing this, but that's spinning around? But if I put enough pressure, I can stop it. So this one is actually pretty strong, so which is good. Griots, you did an excellent job. And this, officially I'm gonna go on record right here. This is my new favorite, okay? My new bestie. This is my BFF. It's powerful, it's ergonomically friendly, it costs the same as the Rupees. Now with that said, this is the first generation Rupees versus the second generation. This is powerful enough where even at level 1, I have a hard time stopping that rotation. They also have what's called force rotation, which means like that rotary, and this, it's got the gears in it, and I cannot stop that rotation. So it's going to continue to spin and oscillate. That's a force rotation. But they're harder to control as in the user experience. This is very easy to control. So let's get you all quick, So often it's just a matter of like, okay, just here, you come over here, you grab this, and you just feel it. So it's obvious. You see how you just naturally went? I know you were watching me, but you get it. That's for controlling the head of the buffer. This is for controlling the trigger. So it's got a trigger, It's got a button here that allows you to keep it on, and then to release it, you just press the trigger again. It's got the speed dial here. There's not much else to it. It's got a Velcro backing plate. This has a 6-inch backing plate that comes with it. This, my friends, is Americana Global, and I don't remember the dude's name. I think it's LaCroix. Personally, it's like, okay, you hit it out of the park on this one. I've been using this pad. Look how good this condition is. I mean, I did not believe this. I saw his video, and I'm gonna say, okay, BS on that one, but I'm impressed. I've used this pad at least 10 times on full polish jobs, and seriously, the pad looks brand new. I cannot believe it. So I'm impressed. So that's the pad that's on here, Velcro, hook or. We can't use the word Velcro. You know why? Because Velcro is a trademark. It's like Kleenex. It's like Xerox. It's like, meaning it's a patented process. So what we call this hook and loop. Okay, so Velcro is the name brand, but Velcro is not the one that manufactured this. So we call it hook and loop. So that's, these pads come off and on just like that. Now what's unique about this pad is these holes here, these additional holes, because the friction, because this is just not spinning on an axis point, it's also doing this, the friction is, it's really counterintuitive. You know what that means? Kind of. Okay, intuition means, okay, if it was intuitive, it would be, you know how you grabbed it and you automatically did this? That's intuitive, because the body just knows what to do. It's just automatic. You don't really have to put thought into it. So if it's counterintuitive, it defies logic and reason and the intuition. So it's kind of counterintuitive. But I don't remember now where I was even going with that. Something. Okay, go for it. Okay, I'll critique you a little bit. And that is dramatically better, by the way, what you just did there. So if I just suddenly stumbled in onto the moment, I'd look at you and think, oh, it looks like he's got some experience. I can tell he's a newbie still, but he looks like he's got some experience. So what I'm seeing is that now this is going to happen no matter what. The pad is not going to always be perfectly flat. And sometimes I know you're trying to do it intentionally, but sometimes I can tell that it's unintentional because you're just focused on other things. So you want to remember, based on the panel itself, so flat on this panel, see how the buffer is angled against the whole car right here? And flat is almost perpendicular to this car here now. So flat here is different than flat here, right? What we're really concerned with is flat against the actual panel. So flat, 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 flat. But flat is going to be different here because now Darren and me flat against this. So I can have flat against this panel, which if you look at the top of this, like right here, that's not flat anymore. But you could argue that it's flat based on this curvature, right? But it's not. So that's what you have to be aware of. So flat here is more about this to this moment rather than this to this moment. Does that make sense? Flat here, because this really is flat, is all the moments, both this way and this way. So you just need to dissect it a little tighter, like going in this area here. So like this, because the second it goes below this, you now have a curvature. So that's where you have to decide, like, okay, am I going to take it and just kind of hold more pressure and force the foam into that, or am I going to go with an edge like that? Because at that moment, I'm also getting a little bit down here also. So that's where you have to decide as a buffer, like, okay, how am I going to like pressure? Like that. So I fix those edges, and then I come into it like this. So you literally have to break it down, work on keeping it flat. Your time you're spending on it is good. And I feel like the pressure you're applying now is better also, so that's all good. You just need to be, once again, awareness as to is that cat staying flat or not. And like I said, there will be times where you will intentionally need to lift it up because you want to do it. But in those moments, I want to make sure it's because you're choosing to do it rather than you're forgetting about it. Anyhow, so take this off, you know, with the, what's that called? The microfiber, the cloth. Take it off of that. You can kind of inspect your results and then just move forward. And my bladder's about to burst, so and I think at that point, we'll just stop with the filming. Because this is one of the reasons why I've avoided doing these videos. Because it's, I mean, we've been here, what, probably close to 2 hours now. Hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. And how much polishing have we done, you know? But it's just so many variables. So for example, if you notice, like, you know how there's water spots in the car when you wipe it down? Have you thought about that in your head? Like, oh, I wonder what's going on with the water spots. Because some compounds will remove those spots, some won't. So you have to actually prepare the panel prior to this moment in a way that makes sense based on your experience and what kind of polish and pad you're using. Same with decontaminating the paint. You know, that's where the clay bar comes in. So this car is smooth enough where we don't have to worry about I mean, maybe, you know what it is because it was bought at the auction, they do their glorified crappy detail on it. And so generally they rub, or they'll decontaminate the paint mostly. So in these moments, I usually don't have to worry about decontaminating the paint first. Anyhow, so this section, to me, for right now, is likely done. You are now, it's in your hands. I'm going to be working on the other parts of this car. So you can decide, but just go through and dissect it and continue to buff the sides. Any last parting questions?
Nope.
All right, well, go for it then. See, you're my memory guy, the keep me on track guy. For some reason, I wanted to explain why it's counterintuitive. Oh, it's the friction. So because guys have been taught that this is so safe and it's a sure thing, but yet I know that out there, like, does this make you nervous at all? The fact that you're going to take this buffer to what was a $100,000 flat car? You should. I know I was. And to this day, I kid you not, there's a certain level of anxiety that streams through my body when I know I've got to do paint correction. And when I use the term paint correction, what does that mean in your head?
The paint is messed up and you will correct it.
Correct it. But see, that's kind of a simplification. It's a simplification for this because you have paint enhancement, paint correction. And really the difference is that you can enhance the paint so it looks better, but it's not necessarily permanent. Paint correction, if it's really corrected, that's a permanent. It would suggest that it's been done permanently, as in corrected permanently. Does that make sense? So that's where paint correction comes in, is that we actually want to correct the paint. Now, if we wanted to just sell this and we didn't care about anything else, we could just enhance the paint. I know you want to yawn. You can yawn. It's okay. So we could enhance the paint without it being permanent, just to kind of kick it down the road, get it sold. It's a momentary thing. It's superficial. Does that make sense? So, guys, and that's where that counterintuitive word came in. Is we've all been groomed in the industry to think, okay, these are the way to go. This is the tool of the trade, is the DA buffer. It's just about which one do I use, which one's better. They're safe. I can do a swirl-free finish, but yet there's still things that are dangerous about this, and it becomes counterintuitive because most of the industry is teaching you that this is the safest tool on the block. He's like the friendliest kid on the block. Mom's going to let you play with him, okay? He's not going to be nasty or dirty or be mischievous. But yet, he is. He can be. Because this thing, the friction, for example, the danger points on this are the edges right here. There's a lot of pads, like this pad. If you were to get this part with the Velcro up against some trim work, like a mirror or whatever, it can burn an edge or it can leave some permanent damage because of that edge right there. The friction on this will also trash certain materials on a car that this wool pad rotary, which is the most aggressive pad you can use, and we're talking about pads, not compounds or polishers, but pads. The wool pad is the most aggressive as a rule. Then you have foam pads. So foam pads are made for DAs. They don't really, they do have them for DAs now, but most guys are not using them. So this pad, even though it's the most aggressive, is safer in ways than a foam pad because they produce friction differently. I know it doesn't really make sense because you haven't spent enough time behind it, but it does. I mean, it will when you get more experience. So here, you come over here. I'm going to dial this down until it's say 2. But first, hold it up in the air. And what I want you to do is just turn it on without putting on the paint. Go ahead and turn it on. What I want you to do is really just get used to controlling it without being on the paint, that's all. So you turn it off. Now the rule is that you want to keep the pad, the buffer, flat. That's the rule. Okay, so there's always rules and then there's always the exceptions to the rules. So based on once again, the nuances or the topography of the car will determine if you really can keep it flat. But sometimes, for example, right here, it's like, oh, if you kept that flat, if you kept this flat, do you think it's even going to touch in there? It's not. So if I just said, Joel, buff this car, you have to keep this perfectly flat on the entire car, you would literally miss spots of the car, correct? So therefore we have to break the rules. And this kid on the block now becomes a little mischievous. And we have to learn to break the rules. So, but that is the rules. You keep it flat to avoid swirl marks, but you also have to understand you're going to have to tilt it and angle it and position it based on the body panels themselves. So go ahead, grab it, turn it on.
On the car?
Go for it. You're a natural. All right, I'm done. Okay, I'll come back in 3 hours and we'll see how far you've gotten. So not too bad, right? Okay, so let's do this because I was using this yesterday and so there's a little bit of polish on this. So really we're actually polishing this out, polishing this with no polish on it. So I'm going to take this. This is Shoal Concepts S20 Black. It's what they call their one-step, I don't know, their true one-step. And it's really a phenomenal product. So I'm going to put a little on this. And this is what the industry calls seasoning the pad, which I'm not a big fan of seasoning the pad because they get, I don't know, every time I see someone on video season a pad, to me they use too much polish. So I'll just sit here and you can make lines in it, you can draw a little happy face, whatever. What essentially you're trying to do is disperse or dispense polish around this pad kind of evenly rather than just a big glob in the middle. But honestly, that's where guys overthink it. And notice, would you call that a little or a lot of polish? Like if I didn't tell you anything, I would be willing to bet you'd probably put on about 10 times that amount, right? That's what I found. When it comes to beginners, you guys will want to use way too much polish or compound. And do you know the difference between polish and compound?
Polish just makes it shiny and compound actually fixes it, right?
Yeah, that's a good, yeah, that's good. And that's essentially what it is. The problem is it's one of those terms like polishers and buffers that people constantly interchange. And it's like, well, what are you really talking about? So as a rule, once again, the rule, compounds are more aggressive, have abrasives in them, and that's the first step. Polishing is so compounding does the fixing, it does the heavy lifting, let's call it that. Polishing does the final glossing, it's what produces a real gloss. But this is a one step, which means it has enough abrasives in it where it can do true paint correction, but at the same time as it polishes it to a nice high gloss. So that is not much polish, but that's really all it takes. You don't need to go overkill because if you use too much polish, you actually end up creating a bigger mess and you become frustrated because then the polish starts responding in funky ways, and that's where you and experience come in, is you have to determine what your end game is, what your expectations are for this moment, and how much polish you're going to use. So with that said, go ahead and just start polishing. You've got some polish on it now, so go for it. So remember the rule was flat, right? You keep it flat as much as possible. And now at this point, you're probably thinking, well, how fast do I go? How hard do I push down, right? Well, that's where you and experience comes in, is you've got to figure out. Okay, go ahead and turn off. That's where only you can decide. Meaning I'm here with you and I can say, hey Joel, this paint is trash. We need to go heavy on it. But really, until you get behind the buffer and you start using it, you just don't know what that means. So that's where you have to do a little polishing, dial the speed where you think is appropriate, and it's really just a judgment call. It's like, oh, some expert out there would be like, oh, dude, you've got to do it number 5. It's like, okay, number 5 it is. Well, what if I came in and when you weren't looking, I dialed it down to number 4? Do you think you'd know? Probably not. Do you think the paint would know? Probably not. But if I dialed it down to 1 and you were used to doing it at 5, yeah, you'd be able to tell. Okay, so honestly, it's just a subjective call. So, but this is where you then take the polish off and you check for your results. Now, if we were going to be real zealots, we would bust out the LED light and we would inspect it with our light. But because this is dealer work, hence, that's the context. Context gives meaning. I know I'm going in all these tangents, but I'm trying to teach you stuff here. So content. Do you know what the content in this moment would be? Actually, it could be a few things. I'll help you out. Content could be the car, it could be the buffer, it could be the objective. The context is kind of like what's around it. It's kind of like this microfiber cloth. I could say, Joel, microfiber cloth. That's the content. You're like, okay, Darren, what? What about it? Well, just Joel here, microfiber cloth. You're like, help me out here, Darren. What do you want me to do with it? Or what? Well, that's where context gives that meaning. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, Joel. This is a microfiber cloth. This is what we use to wipe off the polish with. Why do we use a microfiber cloth? Because it's safer and friendlier than a terry cloth or a all cotton cloth. And so that's where I'm now giving you information or context so that you understand the meaning of, here, Darren, or here, Joel, have a microfiber cloth. You're like, well, what do I need that for? Well, you need it to rub the compound off. Don't you know that? You're like, no, because you didn't tell me that. You didn't apply any context. So in the context of what you're trying to accomplish, that's where you pick and choose your tools, your guns, your ammunition. It's like, what are you trying to accomplish? So you have to take some action, pick a speed, pick a compound or a polish, pick a buffing pad. That's your action. And then you move forward. And then you pull back and you assess. You say, okay, did my actions produce the results that I want? Yes or no? Well, I am not sure yet because I haven't achieved my goal. But am I headed in the right direction? Do I need to dial up that speed? Like, do I think I need to produce more friction by dialing up that speed? Or maybe I could produce more friction by simply pushing harder on it. Or maybe I could just spend more time in that specific area. See how much control you really have? So pressure, and I'll add another variable. So yeah, use 2 hands for this moment. Bring it over here a little bit. So for example, as I talked about the disbursement or displacement of friction. So this whole pad, if I put it flat, it's going to disperse the amount of pressure and speed to this entire area, right? So if I had an edge, suddenly it's all going to be put on that edge. So you can control it. So let's say you're working on a flat panel. Guess what you can control? You can actually lift this up so that you focus that friction onto the edge instead of the whole thing. So in the real world application, put that buffer down, face down, right. So you could actually tilt this up without going far enough where it's going to hit that dangerous edge. And you could then force some additional friction into the moment. So between the pressure, between how long you stay in a certain spot, the speed setting, the compound, the pad, you can control all those variables. So guys will ask me, it's like, oh, I don't know what to do or what to start with. It's like, well, tell you what. Let's say you were going to go into this business. And you're in your head, you're like, hell no, this is too much. Yeah. You're like, no way, Darren. I get it, trust me. So guys ask me, it's like, oh, I don't know what to do. There's all these opinions out there. It's like, well, you know what? Just do something. Doing something is better than nothing. You know why? Because if you did nothing, you're not getting any external information being fed into you that you can respond from, correct? So let's say you are so afraid to take a step forward because you're afraid it will be in the wrong direction, right? But guess what? If you never take that step, how are you going to know that that way is the wrong way? Maybe it's the right way. Maybe that way is the right way. But you won't know until you just do something, right? Because you take a step, it's like, oh, am I headed in the right direction? Knowing that you have to have a goal in mind. So this, same deal, is you take a step. You buy a buffer, you buy a pad, you buy some compound. This is where my recommendations come in. I try to help guys navigate through the endless sea of opinions. But guess what? You will buy more stuff. It's natural. You'll test more polishes, you'll test different pads, but you need to first take that step. Same with this. So you first have to test it, see how the paint responds, see how the polish, the pad, the buffer, how everything comes together, and just do it. Then you check a section and you decide, okay, maybe I need to apply a little more pressure. Maybe I need to tilt the buffer up in this moment to get better friction. Maybe I need to back off because it's going too quickly and now I realize I need a little more working time, whatever. This is just where experience comes in that I can't teach you. You'll just have to spend time behind the buffer. Anyhow, so with all that said, what's going through your head? At least anything that can be repeated on camera. Any questions, anything that, because really at this point, I feel like you have enough information. I could just say, okay, Joel, just go for it. I'll come back. I'll just tag team and I'll come and check your work. If you come across something and you've got a question, you could just ask me, right?
Yeah, how fast and what pattern?
Okay, that's good, pattern. So as a rule, people will talk, and you know, you just push the, there's this video. This is where I'm only hesitating because now I want to name drop. You know, in my industry, there's these big so-called professionals. So there's a couple of guys out there that have shot videos, and I'll show you. And many of you guys will recognize this perhaps. So there's this one video where they're actually, let me check the view of this. Okay, there's actually a video. And I think it's called, Are You Polishing Wrong? Or Quit Polishing Wrong. And so, as a rule, what we've been trained to do is take a 2-foot square, and that's your focus. So on many of the polishes and compounds, it will say, work with a 2x2 section, apply, some of them will say like, apply a dime size, or a pea size, or whatever. Some of them say it, some of them don't. But, so you do what's called, I think they call it a cross hatch section, which means you go up and down, and in this case that would be vertical for me, and then you go back and forth, which would be horizontal for me. That way you have full coverage. It's really just a safety, it's kind of like creating a safety net, where you make sure you've got everything covered, everything polished. So the simple answer is you just go back and forth, and then like this. And now you know that essentially everything got polished, right? So you could keep it that simple. But once again, guess what? When I'm trying to finesse this edge here, am I really going to be able to do that? No, I'm not. So therefore, once again, the rule, the exception to the rule. So these couple of guys, couple of industry experts, and yes, they certainly know what they're doing. Unfortunately, they also know how to confuse the industry and make it something that it's not, or make it more than it really needs to be, which is my way of saying they confuse a topic that doesn't really need to be confused. So when guys watch that video, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm already afraid to touch a part of the buffer, and now they're just told me that everything I've learned is incorrect, and now I have to learn this new correct. And I've never even had a buffer in my hand yet. And now you're sitting there watching it at your computer, and you're like, WTF, I'm even more afraid now than before. And so that's what frustrates me. It's like, dude, why do you do that? Well, I know why they do it, but anyhow. So it's like, they're saying you have to come in at an angle, like a scallop. Woo, 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 woo. It's like, oh yeah, that's much better. I kind of scalloped my way to perfection. You know, it's like, oh really? No, jack off sign, okay? So here we have to dissect the panel. Let me verify that this. So for example, this panel, not only is it not a flat square panel, it's got nuances to it. Intricacies, the topography, whatever you want to call it. So we've got this bulge of the fender that kind of then dips in up here, and then it goes up into the hood. So we've got a round, flat pad. It's like, there's no way you can just keep it flat 100%. So the point is you have to dissect the panels. Like, okay, here we have a slight character line here. This is kind of rounded. This is a little more flatter. This bulges out. These are the danger areas, as in these are the areas that are more prone to producing or generating friction when I put the buffer there. Okay? So this is what goes through your head, and you start dissecting it mentally. Then you physically respond to what you did mentally. It's like, okay, I can approach it like this. I can keep the pad or the buffer flat here. Up here, I'm going to have to tilt it and work with the natural curvature of the panel. Here, I'm going to be able to dissect this. This is going to be mostly flat along here. I'm going to have to come up in here and work it down here. Here's an edge here. So this is what needs to go through your mind. So what I'm going to do is just get some of this dust off. I'm going to have you polish this panel. Are you up for the challenge?
Sure.
Just know, despite what maybe is racing through your head, it would be hard to actually permanently damage this, okay? So I could sit here on this edge like this. Are you getting nervous yet?
You know what you're doing.
So let me see that claw. So I just sat there and basically broke the rules, because you're not just going to sit there. It's like, you know, you're polishing, and then someone comes up and you're having a conversation, it's like, and the buffer still goes like, oh yeah. Oh, dude, I forgot the buffer was there, and I just burnt it. It's not going to happen, okay? The point is you would actually have to try with this machine to do some damage. I can hold it over that. I can hold it over that. You really have to try. But with that said, is this paint, despite appearances, because we've got overcast skies. See, I'm making Joel yawn. Who knows? I know, trust me. But we have to do enough to correct the paint. So you will have to spend, so let me do, I'm going to do half of this, and you can just watch and see kind of how long, how much polish I'm actually using. So this pad is slightly seasoned from yesterday. Oh no, wasn't yesterday I was here, it was Wednesday. Okay, 2 days ago. So I kind of spread the polish out a little bit. And I'm going to raise this up to 5. I gotta come in at an angle. Woo! You see how it's starting to stop right there? And then now it's spinning? Yeah. So that's what you have to be mindful of, is you want it to really keep doing both, but sometimes it's impossible. Because right now it's stopped, spinning, and now it's spinning. See that? So it's still doing something because it's still, it's still oscillating, but you're not getting both motions in there. So the point is, there's sometimes you just can't prevent it from not seizing. Officially we call it stalling. Kind of like a plane, where you go straight up. Are you an aeronautics guy? Okay, it's what's called stalling, where you go straight up and the airplane does not have enough power to overcome the gravitational pull, and so it eventually just stalls, and then it just boom. So this, when there's enough friction, it stalls the movement. So sometimes you cannot avoid that, and that's just a trade-off. Hey, Lon. Good. So that's where you just have to dictate based on the feedback that you're getting, and you have to not only watch the paint, but you have to be able to watch the head of the buffer and say like, oh, I realize that now it stopped spinning. It's still oscillating, so it's still going to do something, but it's more effective if it can maintain both movements. So this, I'm going to have you, like I said, finish the rest of this panel. And in this lighting, it's all going to look good. And as soon as the sun breaks out, because I'm not going to take the time to bust out the LED lights and that whole stuff, we have fluorescence. Like this morning, you noticed those little, how did you call them? Little scratches, little like swirled scratches. And you said, oh, Darren, are those supposed to be there? And yeah, except those really are, you know what those are from? It's from sanding. It's from when I sanded it with that VA. I don't know if you watched me. So because of that, the way this oscillates, it creates those tiny little scratches. And so I knew that needed more aggressive polishing to remove those 100%. So when you said, hey Darren, are those supposed to be there? The answer is no. So then I come back and I fix it. And then I also spit on the paint while I'm talking. So that's a judgment call you can make. Anyhow, so I'm going to let you do this, and you can ask questions, and we'll just go from there. And hopefully all of you guys have learned a little something, and hopefully you don't feel so overwhelmed with information. Anyhow, we'll figure it out. So go for it. I'm gonna watch you, and I'll let them watch you. So first question he asked, should he put more polish on it? That's where, honestly, I'd say, I don't know, you tell me. Because really, there's no right or wrong. You know that I've put some polish on already, but it doesn't really look like as much. So my simple answer would be yes. I would just, as you saw me do, dab a little bit on there. There we go, yep. Don't you hate learning curves? I mean, at my age, it's like my life is one perpetual learning curve after another. Anyhow, so just go for it. Never mind the fact that there's like 50,000 people watching you right now. Okay, see, that's a good question. See, if you put enough polish on this and you started it up, it would fling it everywhere. So that's what, like a trick, that's what a lot of guys will do, is they'll put the compound there and then they'll just do this, or they'll do this, whatever. I don't worry about that. I just simply put it on the car and turn it on. So remember the rules, flat, dissect it. I know anything for the first time is just awkward. So I get it, trust me. So we have this panel here. This is how I dissect this. It's like, okay, I have where this character line comes to the middle. If I know I hold a pad flat, that right in the middle of this character line, it's really not going to get fit. So I've got to kind of come up to the edge here with the pad like this, and then come up to it like this with the pad like that. And then I can finish it off, kind of like smoothing it out. So I come, I treat these panels as individuals. I polish them, whether it's back and forth, up and down, whatever. But I'm basically kind of coming to the middle of this character line. And then at the very end, I'm just going to kind of, essentially, the goal is to blend it in. And that's what is going through my head. Maybe in your head, you could dissect it differently and come up with a different approach. But remember, flat is a rule. You can tilt it as you feel you need to. But you dissect and you basically break it down into manageable areas based on the information, which is the curvature, the character lines, the body edge lines, go down the list. So that's all that stuff is swirling through your head, and you've got to manage it, and you've got to be able to then translate it from here, all this swirling information, into the application of it. So back at it, baby. Okay, so what I'll do is I will scrutinize or critique what I saw and observed. So for example, this will be the natural tendency, because you just lack experience, is to just kind of, you know, do this type of thing. The problem is not much paint correction is going on if you do it like that. So you could actually do it like that and continue over this panel 50 times. Or you could spend a little more time per section. Did you need something, Shelly?
No, I just think it's cute that you're, or nice that you're training him.
Oh.
I didn't know you were doing that. Good job. He's a good one to get trained by Joel.
Thank you. So what you need to do is spend a little more time per section, and just accept that, and I don't know if it's fear, like I don't know if there's a certain amount of fear that's going through your head where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid to hold it here too long. So if I kind of keep it moving, therefore it's less chance that I'll damage the paint. Is that correct? Okay. But you also have to understand that you're not doing enough correcting, you're just enhancing it, but we want permanent results. What we really want is a combination of permanent and temporary results, because we're kind of trying to cut to the chase because of the application or the context, there's that word, which is dealer work. Their goal is to get this car sold and to make as much money as possible. It's that simple. They want it sold sooner rather than later. So that's where it's like, okay, they've got to balance all that, just like you're balancing all this. So I know that as a detailer and I'm working with a dealer, it's different than working with an end customer or the end owner. So you have to apply that understanding to the situation. So to kind of bring it back full circle is like you could go over this 50 times like this quickly and you'll get some results, but you need to spend a little more time. Right now, I'm trying to hold that line, but you can tell I'm going above it. Like, it's impossible to hold that perfectly straight. That's really not a huge concern. What I'm trying to do is hold that line the best that I can, which is this character line, which is difficult for it to show up on the camera, but I'm trying to hold that character line so that, like I said, I can come to the middle. So up here, I'm going to hold that character line again. Now, in case you're wondering, when I was here on Wednesday, I officially already polished down this area. So I know in this moment I can go quicker over that, but everything from here down needs to be addressed. So that's why I moved a little quicker through that. So I maintain the pressure here and here, and then at the end, maybe I'll finish it off like that. You see, and that the goal is, or my thinking is that I'm essentially blending the two areas together, even though I came up to that line and actually crossed over that line each time. So, and then as far as pressure, put your hand up. I'm going to show you, that's about how much pressure I'm putting against it. So you do it in reverse. Like would you say, how much pressure are you putting against it? Probably that, that's what I thought. So you can put more like that. And if you really need, that would probably be overkill, because then it would probably seize that up. So that's where you have to kind of balance, but the pressure that you're putting is safe, but we want also effective. We want to be safe and effective. So you need to apply a little more pressure, spend a little more time, rather than doing all this stuff. So you really, you seriously have to dissect it. It's like, okay, I'm going to make sure I spend enough time, and I'm really going to focus on this area. But you don't become so hyper-focused that you forget about the edges of this, or the character line here, the character line here. But you want to make sure this section is done. And then you want to make sure this section is done. And this section is done. So you need to spend the time necessary to get each one of those sections done properly. Then as you're working, you're going to kind of blend it in naturally anyways. And then at the very, very end, if you want to, you can just kind of go over it lightly and just kind of finesse it at the very end if you wanted to. You'll develop, if you do enough of this, you'll develop your own, your own rhythm. was like, rhythm. Yes, even white boys have rhythm.